We are a fusion of cultures because of the way we grew up, and I think growing up I thought that that was not okay, but now as an adult I'm like, oh, this is actually the beauty of our communities, the beauty of North Carolina, America, where we get to benefit from all the best parts of all of our cultures, right? I feel like anytime I've talked about myself or any accomplishments that I've had in my life, I always have to start with the story of my family, right? My parents are from El Salvador in Central America, and they came to the US not to chase the American dream, but to escape a nightmare. They were 20 years old in 1980, and a civil war was about to break out. Many families had to sort of answer this incredibly difficult question of, do we leave our home, our loved ones, and everything we've ever known and seek refuge somewhere else? And so the answer for them was, yes, it's time to leave. They took a one-way trip to Mexico City, and from there found a coyote, which are the folks that help bring people across the border, and literally came to this country in 1980 in the trunk of a car. That for them was the beginning of our American story. I mean, Sanford is like your quintessential small town in North Carolina, right? And a small town that is grappling with a lot of change. There is this sort of opportunity because it is a smaller town where like neighbors get to see each other as neighbors. And so I had a really diverse group of friends growing up, right? Like I tell folks I grew up in a Spanish-speaking Latino household in a black neighborhood and predominantly white town. And that was really formative for me, right? Like some of my most painful memories as a kid deal with sort of feeling like I was othered or did not belong because of language, because of identity, because of a number of other issues. I remember in third grade having a shirt that it was a purple shirt and it said Dios bendiga este hogar, which is like God bless this home, essentially, right? I remember a teacher cornered me in elementary school and was just like, what does your shirt say? And I remember her being really upset that I had the audacity to wear a shirt that had something other than English on it. Obviously, if I'm talking about this like 30 plus years later, it had an impact on me, right? I remember it really spooked me. I didn't understand why she was so mad. I feel like a lot of growing up in small town North Carolina meant for me like trying to run away from who I was as a person, right? Like the core of my identity of being Latino. And so you sort of fast forward after college, I sort of start digging into a lot of nonprofits and sort of social sector work. I go to grad school because I realize that I'm really into public policy and I'm sort of a policy nerd, and get a master's in public affairs, public policy at Princeton. And it was at that time during Princeton where I began to study a little bit more history of North Carolina to sort of add a second layer to just sort of my connection to these communities. And after 2 years living out of the state, begin to realize that like I'm a Southerner. You know, like I remember getting really mad when living in New Jersey of how people would talk about the South. I remember getting really mad at the stereotypes that people would sort of share, and got really mad that people didn't have sweet tea. Like, you know, like it was like I was like, where's my barbecue, right? And I remember towards the end of those 2 years, I was like, I'm a son of the South, right? Like North Carolina's home, and if anyone's gonna fight for North Carolina, it's gotta be people like me, because I know North Carolina. And I remember having my first visit at the General Assembly where I was visiting lawmakers, and it was the first time where I realized that these folks don't get it. Like they are so disconnected from the lives of everyday folks who are struggling to get by, who are sending their kids to public schools. Like they don't see the challenges on the ground because they don't spend a lot of time with our community members. There's 170 members of the General Assembly, 50 senators and 120 House representatives, and I'm the only Latino of that 170 body, and was the only one that spoke Spanish, and it became a whole thing. I also felt the burden and responsibility of representing the Latino community, because when folks would show up to the General Assembly, all the security guards knew that Ricky Hurtado was the one that spoke Spanish, and so Latino constituents, regardless of what district they're come, they would point them to my office and be like, go there, that's your first stop. I was like intake, and I took that responsibility seriously, so I felt like I was representing almost like multiple districts in that sense. I was representing the 85,000 people in Alamance County, but also the million people in North Carolina that are Latino. And that representation is really important. As tough as it is to get by for many families right now, I still truly believe that hope is a verb, right? And it is like our collective actions, it is our collective responsibility to keep that hope alive. So yeah, as I think about like my proudest accomplishment, I think it's that, right? For people to see themselves in the fabric of our community and to see that the fight in front of us is like worth fighting.